living species today are at the end of their evolutionary history, right? So it's not like we as Homo sapiens evolved from gorillas or chimpanzees or bonobos. That's impossible. They're our relatives. You can't evolve from your cousins. You're at the same point in your evolutionary history. Okay? Now, when you go back in time, because all life comes from pre-existing life, we share a common ancestor. To us, that common ancestor probably looks a lot like a chimpanzee. But if you asked a chimpanzee, that common ancestor probably looks like a human. Right? Does that make sense? Now, what do we know about our evolution? If you look around at all the other things that are like us, the primates, they all have fur. Do we have fur? No. What's the simplest, okay, my family, yes. What's the simplest explanation of that? We lost it. We used to have fur, but then we lost it. If everything else has fur and we don't, the simplest explanation is we used to have fur and we lost it. If everything else has those big jaws and those canines, right, and we don't, what's the simplest explanation? We lost it. We used to be like that, but we lost it. Okay? That's the simplest explanation. Does that help, Mohammed? Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a mind trip. It's a non-anthropocentric view of the world, and we don't like to do that because we like to put ourselves in the middle of things. But to sort of accept, like, we're just another species on this planet. Yeah.
Why do we lose something?
Why we lose our fur? Excellent question. Anybody know?
No, I was just gonna say, do we really need it? Because at a certain point, like, could we do things that other animals could have, like, been fired and keep ourselves warm?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. So fur comes with costs and benefits. So one of the benefits of fur is staying warm. One of the costs of fur is what? What's that? Get dirty, yeah, lights and other things, right? That's the problem. Yeah. So, you know, just we didn't need it, right? We're in the tropics, we're tropical species. We didn't need it. Now, when we first lost our fur, we had very light skin. Because if you look underneath the fur of an animal, that has very light skin. So then we evolved darker skin, which we had for a very, very long time. And, you know, most humans still have dark skin. Most humans still live in the tropics. Some humans left the tropics and the skin world changed. Now, along the way, you know, that furriness was kept in certain parts of the body for certain reasons. Does that make sense?
How
You
come
know
we
what
didn't
I'm
lose
saying?
the hair on our head?
As a way of distinguishing again between youth and adulthood, we grow fur, right? You see a baby doesn't have they have hair on their head, but they don't have hair on their face, not on their armpits, not in the genital regions, right? We've maintained that as a way of indicating, like, I am now sexually ready. Yeah, what's up?
Is it the reason we begin to, like, using fire that comes out of warm so we don't get fur anymore?
No, well, it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. Fire probably showed up about 500,000 years ago. Yeah, we started losing our fur long before that. Yeah.
If we lost our fur, or basically like a decrease, because we still have like fur, I guess, right? And then hair on our arms. But like, why didn't we lose hair on our head? Or why didn't it decrease? If anything, it increased. Right?
Some humans have lost hair in their head.
Like, oh,
Yeah. Some humans do lose hair in their head.
well, alright.
By the way, if you go bald, you have higher testosterone.
Is that true? That's funny.
And higher what? Outer chain system. Yeah. Right. So hair does protect us from the sun. That's a big one. Yeah, it protects us from the sun.
Hey, yeah, it's just
All right. What's that? Yeah. That's awesome. All right. I go. All right, I gotta talk about a couple of things before I move on to systematics, and we can do those later. All right. Adaptive radiation is a form of macroevolution. We saw this with Darwin's finches, where an ancestral finch moved to the Galapagos Islands, and because there were so many niches available, it evolved different traits to occupy those different niches. That's a macroevolutionary stuff. Pretty cool. Okay. Rapid speciation, because there are so many different ways of living available to them. Adaptive radiation. Questions on adaptive radiation? It's pretty straightforward. Extinction. So the other part of macroevolution is the loss of species, and this is called extinction. And up until recently, extinction basically was forever. Once you lost a species, it never came back. Now, we can actually get the DNA from extinct species and put it in other things and grow new species, old species. Typically, the background extinction rate is relatively low. It's about 1 in 1,000. It has gotten much higher because of humans. Here we look at some of the big mass extinctions. The one that wiped out the dinosaurs, the KT extinction. The biggest one of all was the Permian-Triassic extinction, where we lost like 90% of all life in the ocean just got wiped out. We don't know why this, we know why this one happened. This one happened because of an asteroid hit the Earth. This is rad. I'm not sure you guys know about this, but we actually know the time of year that this occurred. Because when the asteroid hit, it left a lot of iridium in the soil, and so you can actually find the layer. And in that layer, you find pollen from certain plants that were only flowering at that point in time, which is kind of cool. So we know the time of year that it occurred. We also know now how the dinosaurs died. So we used to think that there was this impact and it created like a winter and everything got cold. It's not at all true. What happened was, this asteroid hit the Earth, and it hit it so hard that the rebound from the asteroid shot all this earth, this dirt and rock, back out into space. It went back out into space, and then it fell back to Earth. And as it fell back to Earth, it got hot. The friction of falling through the atmosphere heated it up, and it basically cooked the entire surface of the Earth and burned everything. So, how did mammals survive? Mammals at the time were burrowing little animals. So if you happen to have eggs underground or you're burrowing underground, you only need to be underground that much to be insulated from it. The oceans, the top 100 meters or so just boiled, like it just cooked the oceans. So the extinction really happened like in a couple days. Now what's nuts is it could happen again. That's kind of sick. The Permian-Triassic extinction, we think this may have been caused by massive volcanic eruptions that just filled the atmosphere with toxic gases, acidified the oceans, and killed everything. And by the way, that's what we're doing right now by burning fossil fuels. So, just saying. If we look at the diversity of life on the planet, by and large, it's been increasing. There have been more and more things, particularly driven by the plants, the angiosperms. We'll talk more about that later. And let's see. I'll get into this later on. We talk more about biodiversity. I want to move on to this stuff. But basically, there have been 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet. And you are now living through the 6th. So it's estimated that we could lose between 1/3 and 1/2 of all species in the next century because of humans, basically. through climate change and through changing of ecosystems. Yeah, you guys get to experience the 6th great mass extinction. We'll talk about that more when we get to ecology. All right. Systematics. All right. So I'm kind of going backwards a little bit here because I introduced some of this stuff in lab. I want to go back. Remember the Linnaean classification system. You guys remember this one? Right. So we now have the domain at the top. Remember what the domains are? There are 3 domains. Prokaryota. Oh, right, only, or 2 domains. 2 domains, sorry. Eukaryota, prokaryota. Sorry. There's 6 kingdoms. What are the 6 kingdoms?
Animalia, fungi,
Animalia, Plantae, fungi, Protista, bacteria, and the 6th one? Archaea. Archaea. This system of classification developed by Linnaeus. He was a Swede. Started classifying things. We still live with it today, but remember, as I mentioned in lab, it really isn't that accurate. Well, at least it's not based upon evolution, because there have been way more than 7 evolutionary steps. But we still use it. It's just what we've been using for a long time. They're trying to come up with a new system called phylocode that would be based upon evolution, but it's really, really complicated. They haven't gotten there. So, we still use this. You should know it. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The way that I remember it is I sing it to myself. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order. You should also know, as biologists, the proper way to write a scientific name. Scientific name has 2 parts. It has the genus, and it's capitalized, and then it has a specific epithet, which is not, and the whole thing's italicized. That's the proper way to write a scientific. Okay? All right. So, when we are trying to classify species, we are looking for those shared traits. All right? Now, the language here gets confusing. Homologies are homologous characteristics that came from a common ancestor. They are ancestral traits. They're a trait that you inherited from your ancestors. Okay. Homoplasies, on the other hand, also known as analogies, are analogous traits which did not result from common ancestry. So, look at the wing bones of a bird and the wing bones of a bat. They both have a humerus, they both have radius and ulna, though in the bat they've been fused together, and they've got digits. Those are homologous traits, meaning that they were both, they got those from the common ancestor. The common ancestor of bats and birds is some reptile lived a long time ago, and it had those same arm bones. Okay, those are homologous traits. Now, the wings themselves, however, are analogous traits, because the common ancestor of these two did not have wings. Wings evolved independently in the bird lineage and in the bat lineage. Questions? You got that? Sound good? Courtney? You sure? Okay. Catherine? You sure? Right. Hannah? Walls? You got it? Okay. So, I talked about this a little bit. When we're doing our cladograms, we use an outgroup comparison. The outgroup is related to the groups that we're trying to sort out, but not too closely related, so we're not going to confuse it and get it stuck in the middle here somewhere. Here we have two different butterflies, orange palm butterfly, monarch butterfly. The outgroup, a good outgroup could be like a caddisfly. We know that it's like distantly related, but it's not super close. This gives us something to compare it against. When we did the skull lab, what was our outgroup? The apes, right? Chimpanzees and gorillas. Good. Okay. Now, monophyly, polyphyly, and paraphyly. Okay. We are shooting for monophyletic groupings. Monophyletic groupings is a group of all taxa, plural of taxon, that share a common ancestor. So, this here is a monophyletic group. That there would be a monophyletic group. All of this would be a monophyletic group because they all share common ancestor. Okay? Polyphyletic taxon occur when we've got individuals from different lineages grouped together. All right? One example of this is the term bluebird. Bluebirds. Yep. They're all different birds that are blue. They could be buntings, they could be jays, they could be swallows, but we call them all bluebirds. Okay? That's a polyphyletic group, right? They're actually in all different taxa, but they all happen to be, these certain ones in the taxa happen to be blue, so we clump them together, right? Paraphyletic taxa, it's where you should include groups, but you're not. Like you're only including these guys, but you don't include that one. This is what we saw with the example of the birds, right? Birds are actually more closely related to crocodiles than anything else. Therefore, if you're going to have a class Reptilia, you really need to include the birds, right? Because birds are part of that. Questions? Okay. So monophyly, polyphyly, and paraphyly. Monophyletic, polyphyletic, paraphyletic. You guys got those? All right. I showed you guys cladistics, how that works. Bada bing, bada boom. Remember the rule of parsimony? Nice. We try to avoid homoplasies. These are product of convergent evolution. They make our cladograms messed up. All right. We went over the example cladograms. Okay, and then here's the human cladogram. Okay. Did you guys get something close to this? Pretty close? Good. Now, if the name of the species had homo in it, it would be close to us. Does that make sense? Australopithecus, farther out. Paranthropus, farther out. Pretty close. Now, we now have the ability to determine phylogeny using DNA, which is really cool. So if you can get the DNA, then you can get the actual barcode of the species, which is rad. This is kind of like the 23andMe stuff. It works basically the same way. There are certain traits, they're basically DNA sequences, and we can use those DNA sequences as traits, ancestral traits, derived traits, etc., to find synaptomorphies in order to put species together. Molecular phylogenetics, pretty cool. So this is kind of a neat one. These three different segments, A, B, and C, taken from three different species. What we find are that, so two things have allowed us to do this. One, DNA sequencing, and computers. Computers can go through and do this stuff using algorithms very, very quickly, right? So what we found is that segment C, B, and A differ from, A is different because it has the insertion of these two C's, has a G there. Segment B has GCC, here, okay? So we can actually go through and figure out what happened. There was a 2 nucleotide deletion here, there was an insertion here, 1 nucleotide insertion there, and those are different evolutionary steps that led to those differences. kind of a cool one in humans. Humans have 46 chromosomes, chimpanzees have 48. And the reason for that is one of our chromosomes is actually 2 chimpanzee chromosomes that come together. Again, I shouldn't say chimpanzee chromosomes, 2 primate chromosomes that come together to form one. All right. Amino acid sequences can also be used instead of just DNA. And when we do this, we actually get, this is kind of rad, this is the entire tree of life. It's wild. Mammals over here, ducks, birds, fish, right? So up here we have these are the eukaryotes. No, these are all the eukaryotes. These are all the eukaryotes. So here, these are all the eukaryotes. These are protists over here. These are plants. Then we have insects. We have mollusks coming off from there. Yeah, kind of cool. And then you can extend it even farther back to get all tree life. Yeah. Now, so this whale case study that I want you guys to read about. Okay, we know that whales had to evolve on land. Why do we know that? Because they're mammals, right? And mammals live on land. Again, if all the mammals live on land except for a couple that live in the ocean, what's the simplest explanation?
They used to live on.
They evolved on land and some of them went into the ocean. That's the simplest explanation, right? It's not that, oh, there were a couple that lived in the ocean and then all of a sudden they spread to land. Okay? Now, we actually know, based on the fossil record, what type of mammal were the whales. They were what are called artiodactyls, even-toed ungulates. Other artiodactyls include camel, pigs, hippos, deer, and cow. I like to think of the ancestral whale as like it was like an ambush predator. It was like a deer with big sharp pointy teeth and hooves, like a crocodile deer thing. It was like a Rambo version of Bambi. It was a Bambo. Anyway, all right, this is gonna kind of mess you guys up. But, so one of the traits that is shared by all of these artiodactyls, but that the whale doesn't have, is this thing called an astragalus. Astragalus is this, it's a bone in the ankle. Now, you're like, whales don't have ankles, but whale ancestors did, right? So the ancestral whale that lived on land had feet, right? It was a totally separate lineage. Okay, had feet. Those ancestors did not have that astragalus. Yeah.
You said those ancestors did not have it.
Did not have it.
The whale ancestors did not have it?
Whale ancestors did not have it. Okay? Okay. The simplest explanation is that it evolved after the whale split off from these guys. That's the simplest explanation. Yeah?
Did we determine that based off of the bones of the whale currently?
Nope, based off of the fossil record of the whales. Because we have cetaceans, whales, with legs. Again, read Mammals That Conquered the Seas. Wait a second. Don't jump my punchline. Now, there is a new hypothesis. Read Mammals That Conquered the Seas. That says that in fact, the whales are closely related to the hippos. Now, it doesn't mean that because hippos live in the water and whales live in the, that's not what it is. It's just that they're more closely related to hippos. But what that implies is that the whale lost the astragalus over here, okay? This is not the most parsimonious explanation because it means that The astragalus evolved here, and then it got lost there. That's 2 evolutionary steps, not 1. It's not the most parsimonious explanation. It broke rule 2 of science. But what is rule 1? Data rules. If we look at the DNA of cow, deer, whale, hippo, pig, peccary, camel, what we find is that the whale DNA is closest to the hippo DNA. Right? So the DNA evidence actually points to this scenario, which is not the most parsimonious. But remember, we always follow the data first. Now, it's still controversial. Read the article, get more into that. You'll see the controversy. Not everybody agrees with it, right? It's one of those things. But it's pretty strong evidence. Okay? All right. Homework. Did you guys do your homework? Those diagrams? Who wants to come up and do, you want to do 3? Okay, do 3. Who wants to do 1? 1's the easy one. You. And who's doing 2? Who's gonna do 2? Me, you wanna do 2? No? Jasmine, you wanna do 2? Want to give it a shot? Amy?
It's like that. Alright, let's do it.
Move over a little bit. Elena?
I don't know why my family does that.
Can I fix it? Let's see.
Kind of get it. Yeah, I know, it's hard. It takes a lot of You want some candy? Yeah.
He and Dominic gave us recessive. When we got
I didn't get a bigger bag.
Typically, yeah. But if you have a hymn like this, which is, that word doesn't exist.
Alright, you won't
Yeah.
see this one like.
If you've got incomplete dominance, then it's not really dominant recessive. Putting you in a bad mood?
My dad ate like the whole package and he got a little, and then like,
Okay.
he got like overreacted. He ate so much of it and like, the doctor was like, gotta stop. Cause like, here, he would eat like a pack of these.
So he developed an allergic reaction.
No, I think he just got a reaction from it. He's not allergic, but like, and he's scared of it. But he ate like a huge pack of these because like we bought like a huge pack in the 99.
Huh? I think it was.
Because A doesn't have one. That A doesn't have one.
I'll go.
I do that and it was like, I didn't get that one either.
Somebody left their phone up here. Yep. Okay. Number one.
Ginger.
Species, okay, good. So the nice thing with playgrams is you can always go through and check them to make sure that they make sense. Question 1. Species D only has trait 3. Good. Species C has traits 2 and 3. Good. Species A has traits 1, 2, and 3. Good. And species B has traits 1, 2, 3, and 4. Good job. Okay. Medium. Species C has trait 2. Species D has traits 2 and 3. Species A has trait 1, and species B has traits 1 and 4. Yeah.
Do you care if you look at?
Nope. So remember, around any given node, it can totally rotate. What I'm doing is I'm going through, I'm going up the lineage. So C, boop, trait 2, D, boop, boop, trait 2, 3, 6. All right, now this, I gave this on an exam once.
Really?
And the students were like, that was so hard. I'm like, oh, it's easy. And I looked at it like, oh shoot, that was really hard. Okay. Species A has traits 2 and 3. Yep. So we can fix it though. Okay? So we'll go back to that in a second. So what's the problem with this? 1, right? Okay. Species C has nothing. It's an outgroup. All right. That's accurate. Species B has trait 1, good, and species D has traits 1, 2, and 4. That's good. So it's all good except for A. And what's the first rule of science? Data rules. So you have it. So what has to happen?
Convergence, evolution, or loss of.
Yeah. Kind of lose one somewhere in there. That's how you fix this one.
That's the right answer.
That's that. There's another correct. Anybody else do it differently?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just put, B separate.
What's that?
So I did C as an outgroup, and then off of C, I did D and A.
You did
I put B separate.
And you did B separate. So why don't you cross it? Yeah, there are 2 ways to do it. One, either it was evolved and then lost, or the other way of doing it is it had to evolve once. All right. Well, Kay's working on that. I know you guys are worried about Hardy-Weinberg problems. Here's a Hardy-Weinberg question. See if you can work that one out. Yeah.
So can we have like 2
F of R equals P.
traits happening on one line? Is that fine?
Remember, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you got 2 traits. Yeah, nothing says. Again, it's not likely, it's not the most parsimonious answer, but if it is what the data shows, what the data shows. Data rules. Wait a second. Oh, you're sneaky. 4/1? No. Okay. There we go. So this is the other answer. Or this is a variation of it, okay? So the other way to make this happen is either one, evolves and then it gets lost, or it evolved twice in two separate lineages. So either it evolved here, right? Or, alright, wait a second. What did you do? Why is this attached to C? It doesn't need to be. That's the same thing, right? Okay, yeah. Okay. This is more accurate, because if there's a branching, there needs to be a reason why it's branching, right? Yeah.
I have another one.
You have another one? All right, come on.
But that one doesn't have a reason
Yellow
why
is
it's
gonna
branching.
be plus.
What's that?
What's the reason that one's branching?
What's that? This one?
No, like you moved it.
Why is it coming off?
Thanks.
So why was it coming off of C? There has to be a reason why you think it was going off.
90.
Yeah, what's your
But
evidence?
so now why is it coming off of C?
Because this is the ancestral lineage.
Red,
You could also draw a line, JJ, over there.
Yeah.
90.
It's,
So
it,
for P,
Yeah,
all
it's this-
P,
if you put it up here, it indicates that it evolved over here. Why do you think it evolved over here?
100 divided by 90.
This is, because this is the ancestral lineage. What's this?
D has 1, 2, and 4.